Hello, my friend. Tonight we journey not to a distant galaxy or a forgotten pyramid, but to a place far more unsettling, the inner chambers of an ancient Chinese imperial palace. Imagine, if you will, the stifling weight of silk brocade, the cloying scent of incense, and the constant, unnerving creak of polished floorboards underfoot. You are there, a young man, perhaps barely out of boyhood, caught in a web of opulence and silent terror. Every shadow seems to hold a secret, every whispered word a potential betrayal. You might think, from the comfort of your cozy bed, that such a life sounds like a dream of luxury, but trust me, my friend, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And do let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the palace gates, not by choice, but by decree. Perhaps your family, impoverished and desperate, sold you, or maybe a local official, eager to curry favor, plucked you from your village. Either way, you are now property, destined for a life far removed from the fields or markets you once knew. The imposing vermilion gates loom before you, dwarfing everything you've ever seen. Each ornate carving seems to sneer, a silent promise of the gilded cage that awaits. You step inside, and the world shifts. The air itself feels different, heavier, perfumed with exotic spices and something else, something metallic and sharp, like ambition mixed with fear. You are no longer just a boy. You are raw material, an offering. The initial days are a dizzying blur of new faces, new rules, and an oppressive silence that blankets everything. You are bathed, dressed in clothes softer than anything you've ever felt, and fed delicacies that make your stomach clench with both hunger and apprehension. This isn't hospitality, it's preparation. You see others like you, young men with nervous eyes and skin scrubbed raw, moving through the courtyards with a hesitant grace. Some look terrified, others wear a practiced mask of submission. You notice their posture, the way their heads are slightly bowed, their gazes averted. You begin to mimic them instinctively, a survival mechanism kicking in before you even understand. The game. This is your first lesson. Blend in, disappear, and whatever you do, don't draw unwanted attention. Historians still argue whether these male concubines, or favorites, had any true agency in ancient China, or if they were simply pawns in a much larger political game. Was it possible for some to genuinely rise in influence, or were they always just temporary diversions? The palace itself is a microcosm of power, a sprawling city within a city, governed by its own ruthless logic. You learn quickly that even the lowliest eunuch can wield surprising power, a grim reminder that hierarchy is everything here. One mainstream historical fact you grasp immediately is that the emperor's whims are absolute law. His desires, no matter how fleeting or peculiar, dictate the lives and often the deaths of everyone around him. And as a male concubine, you are directly in the path of those whims. There's a quirky tidbit about some historical accounts. Apparently, certain emperors were incredibly superstitious about moles or birthmarks, believing them to signify good or bad fortune. You find yourself surreptitiously checking your own skin, wondering if some random speck might seal your fate. It's a silly thought, perhaps, but in this environment, every detail, no matter how small, feels charged with meaning. You watch as a group of older eunuchs, their faces etched with years of palace intrigue, observe you with an unsettling intensity. They are the gatekeepers, the arbiters of who gets seen and who fades into obscurity. You sense their judgment, cold and calculating. This is your new reality, an object to be appraised, polished, and presented. And if you fail to shine, you will be discarded. The transition from your old life to this new one is less a gentle unfolding and more a brutal, calculated erasure. You are not just entering a new chapter, you are being rewritten. Your clothes, your dialect, even the way you hold your chopsticks is scrutinized, corrected, and refined. The palace staff, primarily eunuchs, move with a quiet efficiency, their hands surprisingly gentle yet firm as they guide you through rituals you don't yet comprehend. They teach you to walk with a particular glide, to bow with just the right degree of deference, and to speak in soft, modulated tones. It's less about etiquette and more about a complete metamorphosis, a shedding of your former self to become a blank canvas upon which the emperor's desires can be projected. You are, in essence, being sculpted. The daily routine is meticulously structured, leaving little room for independent thought. You spend hours in lessons, not the kind of lessons you might imagine, with books and grand philosophical debates, but lessons in aesthetic perfection. You learn about proper grooming, the art of applying subtle cosmetics to enhance your features, and the importance of a meticulously cared-for appearance. Your hair is treated with fragrant oils, your skin pampered with herbal mixtures. It's all about creating an illusion of effortless beauty, a delicate facade that belies the rigorous discipline beneath. You even learn how to play certain instruments, not for personal enjoyment, but to provide a soothing backdrop to imperial meals or private moments. It's an education designed for compliance, for being seen and not truly heard, for being a pleasing presence. One prominent historical fact about the male concubines in various Chinese dynasties is their often short-lived prominence. Unlike the stability offered by an empress, a male favorite's position was inherently precarious, dependent entirely on the emperor's fickle affections. They rarely wielded lasting political power, their influence typically confined to the emperor's personal sphere. You observe how swiftly faces appear and disappear within the inner court, a grim carousel of ambition and downfall. There's a pervasive understanding that your favor is a borrowed thing, a lease that can be revoked at any moment. This environment breeds a unique blend of anxiety and intense focus on the present, for the future is always uncertain. A fascinating detail from historical records suggests some male favorites were rumored to have unique talents, like exceptionally delicate hands for playing the zither, or an unparalleled ability to mix rare teas. You wonder what specific, perhaps overlooked quality might draw imperial attention to you. Is it the curve of your neck, the quiet intensity in your eyes, or merely the luck of being in the right place at the right time? This period of grooming is, in many ways, an audition where every gesture, every inflection is judged. The question of whether these talents were truly inherent or merely cultivated to appeal to imperial whims remains a point of scholarly discussion among historians. It's a chicken and egg situation. Did the emperor choose them for their unique traits, or did their traits become unique because the emperor chose them? You find yourself practicing endlessly, perfecting a smile that conveys warmth without familiarity, a gaze that is inviting yet respectful. It's a strange, almost theatrical existence. You are learning to perform the role of someone desirable, someone who exists purely to provide comfort and fleeting pleasure. The mirror becomes your harshest critic, reflecting not just your physical form, but the subtle ways your posture, your expressions, and your entire being are being molded. You begin to see less of the person you once were and more of the idealized image the palace demands. And with each successful refinement, a tiny part of your former self seems to slip away, replaced by the polished, silent figure they are creating. The day arrives, unannounced yet inevitable. It's not a grand procession or a public spectacle. Imperial attention rarely works that way. Instead, it's a quiet shift in the air, a subtle tension that ripples through the eunuchs and palace women who attend to you. You are given a new robe, finer than anything you've worn before, its silk cool against your skin. Your hair is meticulously arranged, a fragrant balm applied to your lips. Every detail is perfect, designed to present you as an exquisite, ephemeral bloom. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. You know, without being told, that this is the moment you have been groomed for. This is your chance, however terrifying, to exist in the Emperor's sight. You are led down a series of hushed corridors, the silence broken only by the rustle of your new garments and the soft padding of the eunuch's shoes. The air grows warmer, heavy with the scent of burning loose wood and the faint, sweet smell of aged wine. You find yourself in a private chamber, opulent beyond anything you'd previously imagined. Ornate screens painted with soaring landscapes filter the light, casting soft, shifting shadows. Low tables, laden with exquisite porcelain and jade trinkets, gleam softly. And then you see him, the Emperor. He is not the formidable, distant figure you've glimpsed from afar, but a man reclining on a raised platform, surrounded by cushions, his expression unreadable. This moment, the first imperial gaze, is a powerful historical constant across many monarchies. The absolute power of a ruler meant that a single glance could elevate or condemn, could signify favor or utter dismissal. In the structured hierarchy of the Chinese court, being seen by the emperor in a private capacity was a monumental event. For anyone of your status, it was the first, terrifying step into a relationship that could define or endure life. You feel his eyes on you, a weighty, assessing stare that seems to pierce through your carefully constructed facade, stripping away every pretense. You instinctively lower your gaze, as you've been taught, acknowledging his supremacy without challenging it. Accounts from ancient texts sometimes describe the almost supernatural beauty attributed to certain favored individuals, suggesting that their appeal went beyond mere physical attractiveness. Perhaps it was a certain melancholic grace, or a quick wit expressed in a subtle gesture that captivated the imperial imagination. What was it, you wonder, that he saw in you? Was it simply novelty, a fresh face among the many, or something more? The precise nature of the emperor's attraction to his male companions is a subject of ongoing academic discussion, with various theories ranging from genuine affection to political expediency or simply the search for a different kind of companionship. From the women of his harem, it's a complex tapestry of personal preference and courtly intrigue. The interaction is brief. He might offer a soft-spoken command, a simple question, or merely a gesture of invitation. You respond with the practiced humility, your voice barely a whisper, your movements precise and deferential. Every fiber of your being is focused on not making a single mistake, on being flawlessly agreeable. You are not yourself in this moment. You are a carefully crafted mirror, reflecting back only what he wishes to see, and then, as quickly as it began, it ends. He turns his attention to something else, a servant, a scroll, a thought. You are dismissed the eunuchs gently guiding you out of the chamber. But you leave changed. You have been seen. You have entered the emperor's sphere, and your life, for better or worse, will never be the same. A subtle shift occurs in the way the palace treats you. It's not overt, no grand announcement, but rather 1,000 tiny signals that coalesce into a new reality. The eunuchs who once observed you with cold assessment now offer bows, their eyes holding a glint of respect, or, perhaps, a touch of envy. The food brought to your quarters is finer, the silks softer, the attention more immediate. You are no longer just one of many hopefuls. You are, for now, a favored one. This newfound status is intoxicating, a fragile bubble of safety in the ever-shifting currents of court life. You find yourself walking with a new lightness, a quiet confidence blooming in your chest, even as a nagging sense of unease whispers at the back of your mind. The emperor's attention, once a terrifying unknown, now becomes a predictable rhythm. You are summoned more frequently, sometimes to play music while he dines, other times to listen to him read poetry, or simply to exist quietly in his presence. He might ask your opinion on a minor matter, or share a fleeting thought. These aren't deep conversations, not truly. They are more like carefully choreographed dances, where your role is to be agreeable, attentive, and to reflect back his mood. You learn to read the subtle nuances of his expressions, the slight shift in his posture, anticipating his desires before he even vocalizes them. This skill, this exquisite attentiveness, becomes your most valuable asset. It is a well-documented aspect of imperial courts across different dynasties that the emperor's personal favorites, whether male or female, often gained considerable indirect influence, though not holding official positions. Their proximity to the throne meant they could subtly sway decisions, influence appointments, or even pass along vital information. Your very presence near the emperor grants you a certain, albeit unofficial, power. You become a conduit, a whisper-bearer, and people begin to approach you with veiled requests, their words laced with flattery and carefully placed gifts. You quickly learn that even receiving such overtures is a dangerous game, one that can swiftly lead to your downfall if mishandled. Consider the unusual customs sometimes reported in anecdotal historical accounts, where certain emperors would bestow lavish gifts upon their favorites, not just gold or jewels, but entire estates or vast quantities of rare goods. These gifts were less about genuine affection and more about displaying the emperor's boundless generosity and reinforcing his power. It's a grand, theatrical gesture that subtly reminds everyone of your dependence on his whim. How much of the emperor's perceived fondness for his male companions stemmed from genuine emotional connection, versus a performance of imperial magnanimity, or even political calculation, is a matter that scholars continue to analyze. It's a complex interplay of personal and public roles. You find yourself increasingly isolated from the other hopefuls, who now regard you with a mixture of awe and thinly veiled resentment. The smiles they offer are brittle, their congratulations strained. You are now part of a different stratum, lifted by the emperor's favor, but also set apart. The golden cage, once merely a concept, begins to feel very real. You have luxuries beyond imagination, but your freedom is a dwindling currency. Every comfort comes with a silent tether, binding you ever tighter to the unpredictable heart of the palace. You are on a tightrope, and the only one who can keep you balanced is the emperor himself. The silken robes feel less like a luxury and more like a uniform now, a beautifully woven constraint. You move through the palace, a ghost in gilded halls, surrounded by beauty you can barely appreciate. Every meal is a banquet, every chamber a work of art, yet the opulence feels like a suffocating blanket. This golden cage, as you've come to call it in the quiet recesses of your mind, offers boundless comfort but no true freedom. You are fed the finest foods, but you cannot choose what you eat. You wear the richest silks, but you cannot choose your attire. Your days are filled with leisure, but you cannot choose how you spend them. This complete lack of autonomy is a subtle, yet persistent, form of torment. You realize that your life is now entirely dictated by the emperor's schedule, his moods, his fleeting desires. When he wishes for music, you play. When he wishes for quiet company, you sit. When he wishes to be alone, you vanish. There is no personal space, no true privacy. Even your thoughts feel monitored, as if the very walls have ears. The constant awareness of being observed, of needing to maintain a perfect, pleasing demeanor, is exhausting. You learn to smile even when your heart aches, to nod even when you disagree, to feign delight even when you are utterly bored. It's a performance, day in and day out, with your life as the stakes. It's a historical certainty that within these imperial confines, even high-ranking officials and consorts often found themselves trapped by strict protocol and constant surveillance. The emperor, as the son of heaven, existed at the apex of power, but also at the center of an intricate web of rules and expectations that governed everyone, including himself. For someone in your position, the control was even more pervasive, extending into nearly every aspect of your personal existence. You were merely a decoration, an expensive and fragile piece of art to be admired and kept. Ancient anecdotes from court histories sometimes describe certain favored individuals developing strange habits or quirks due to the isolation and immense pressure of palace life, such as obsessively arranging flowers or spending hours gazing at carp in a pond. Perhaps these were coping mechanisms, desperate attempts to exert some small measure of control over a world where they had none. The historical analysis of the psychological toll of court life on those closest to the emperor, particularly those whose positions were based on personal favor rather than official rank, often highlights the pervasive feelings of anxiety, paranoia, and deep loneliness. It's a life of glittering despair. You remember stories from your village, of sun-drenched fields and the simple rhythm of the seasons. You recall the rough texture of homespun cloth against your skin, the earthy smell of the soil, the genuine laughter of children playing freely. Here, the gardens are manicured to perfection, the air is thick with exotic perfumes, and the sounds are muted, respectful. You miss the vulgarity, the rawness, the sheer unpolished authenticity of life outside. The gold and jade that surround you feel cold, lifeless. You are a bird in a magnificent cage, and though the feeder is always full, the sky outside remains tantalizingly out of reach. Each day blends into the next, a tapestry of luxury and silent yearning. The emperor's favor, you quickly learn, is a double-edged sword. While it grants you privileges, it also paints a target on your back. The inner court is a viper's nest of ambition, where every smile hides a dagger and every whispered compliment carries a veiled threat. You become acutely aware of the jealous glances, the icy politeness from those who once held the emperor's ear or coveted your current position. The female consorts, particularly those with powerful family connections, view you with a mixture of disdain and suspicion. To them, you are an anomaly, a breach of traditional court dynamics, and an unwelcome competitor for imperial attention. You begin to notice the subtle sabotage. A favorite food suddenly goes missing from your tray, replaced by something you dislike. A valuable trinket, a gift from the emperor himself, mysteriously disappears from your quarters, only to resurface later in a less prominent location, as if to diminish its significance. Words, seemingly innocuous, are twisted and reported to the emperor in a new, malicious light. You find yourself constantly on guard, analyzing every interaction, trying to discern genuine goodwill from cunning deception. The palace, with its sprawling gardens and ornate pavilions, feels less like a sanctuary and more like a battlefield, where the weapons are whispers and carefully placed lies. It is a well-established historical fact that court intrigue was a pervasive and often deadly aspect of ancient Chinese imperial life. Factions within the palace, often led by powerful eunuchs, empresses, or imperial relatives, constantly vied for influence, and anyone perceived as a threat or an easy target could find themselves caught in their machinations. Your lack of a strong family backing or official title makes you particularly vulnerable, an outsider whose only protection is the emperor's fleeting affection. Your isolation, once a personal burden, now becomes a grave danger. Accounts from various periods mention the bizarre methods employed by some courtiers to undermine rivals, such as planting cursed objects in their rooms or subtly poisoning their incense burners to induce illness. You learn to be wary of even the most innocent-seeming gifts or gestures. The question of whether these subtle acts of sabotage were merely personal vendettas or part of larger politically motivated campaigns of slander and character assassination remains a complex area for historical analysis. It's often difficult to separate genuine malice from strategic maneuvering in the dense records of court life. You find yourself trusting no one completely. The palace women who once seemed helpful now carry an air of suspicion. Even the junior eunuchs who serve your meals and attend to your needs might be informants for a more powerful figure. You learn to keep your thoughts to yourself, to offer only bland, agreeable responses, and to cultivate an aura of harmlessness. It's a wearying existence, this constant vigilance, but it is necessary for survival. The beautiful become a mere backdrop to the endless silent war being waged for imperial favor. Each day is a careful navigation through a landscape riddled with unseen traps. Your education, once focused on aesthetic perfection, now shifts to a more insidious form of conditioning, the art of perpetual agreement. You are not taught to think critically or to express original ideas, but rather to anticipate the emperor's moods and preferences, and to reflect them back to him with seamless grace. Lessons include the subtle flattery that pleases without appearing obsequious, the art of listening intently without interrupting, and the critical skill of knowing when to be present and when to fade into the background. Every interaction is a delicate dance where your partner dictates the steps, and your only goal is to follow flawlessly. You learn the intricate details of imperial history, not for intellectual enlightenment, but to understand the precedents for loyalty, obedience, and the dire consequences of defiance. You are immersed in the biographies of past emperors and their favored consorts, both male and female, dissecting their triumphs and, more importantly, their downfalls. The message is clear. Those who pleased endured, those who challenged were extinguished. This is not learning for knowledge's sake. It is learning for survival, a constant reinforcement of your subordinate role. Your mind becomes a repository of imperial trivia and preferred narratives. ready to be deployed at a moment's notice to validate the emperor's thoughts or soothe his frustrations. It's a historical fact that throughout Imperial China, education for those within the palace orbit, especially those serving the emperor directly, was often highly specialized and practical, focused on courtly arts, administration, or personal service rather than broader academic pursuits. This ensured a compliant and skilled retinue essential for maintaining the intricate machinery of the imperial household. For male favorites, this meant honing skills that directly contributed to the emperor's comfort and amusement, reinforcing their role as personal companions rather than political advisors. Consider the intriguing notion that some of these lessons might have included instruction on interpreting omens or understanding the nuances of ancient divination. Not because the emperor believed in them implicitly, but because he found comfort in their ritual. Such esoteric knowledge, even if just for show, could further cement your value as a unique confidant. How much of this education was truly about cultivating genuine refinement versus simply instilling absolute obedience and a performative agreeableness is a point of ongoing scholarly inquiry. It highlights the constant tension between appearance and reality within the palace. Wars, you find yourself internalizing these lessons, becoming a master of self-effacement. Your own opinions, once cherished, now feel like dangerous liabilities. Carefully suppressed beneath layers of polite acquiescence, you become adept at reading unspoken cues, at sensing the slight shift in the emperor's posture that signals boredom, or the flicker in his eyes that denotes displeasure. This constant vigilance, this relentless self-monitoring, is exhausting. You are a mirror, always reflecting, never truly projecting, and with each passing day, the lines between who you were and who you were forced to be become increasingly blurred, dissolving your original self into the polished, pliant figure of a palace companion. The weight of expectations presses down on you, a constant, invisible burden. Your days are not your own. They are segments of time to be filled with whatever pleases the emperor. You are a living instrument, expected to resonate with his every mood, to provide amusement when he is bored, solace when he is troubled, and quiet beauty when he seeks tranquility. There's no room for your own desires, your own fatigue, or your own silent anxieties. The performance must always be perfect, the smile unwavering, the gaze attentive. You are on call 24 hours a day, a living luxury item in the emperor's personal collection. This constant demand for perfection extends beyond mere presence. You must be witty, but not too witty, charming, but never challenging. You are expected to anticipate his needs, whether it's a fresh cup of tea or a specific piece of music, before he even articulates them. The palace is a vast ecosystem of unspoken rules and delicate balances, and you, as a favored companion, are at the very center of its most volatile element, the emperor's unpredictable will. The pressure to always be on, to always be precisely what he needs, is relentless and utterly draining. A widely acknowledged fact of imperial life is that the emperor's personal household was often a complex hierarchy, with individuals vying for his attention not just for power, but for basic security. Your role, while seemingly elevated, is entirely dependent on maintaining his pleasure, making you intensely vulnerable to any perceived failing. This inherent instability meant that individuals like you were under immense pressure to perform flawlessly, as any lapse could quickly lead to a loss of favor. Or worse, it's been noted in some historical commentaries that certain emperors possessed peculiar personal rituals or eccentricities that their closest companions were expected to accommodate. Perhaps the emperor you serve has a fondness for reciting poetry at odd hours, or demands a particular tea prepared only at midnight. These little quirks, while seemingly harmless, add another layer to your already heavy burden of expectations. The scholarly examination of these intimate interactions between emperors and their favorites often seeks to understand the subtle psychological dynamics at play. Was it genuine connection, or merely a highly refined form of service and control? It's a fascinating window into the human element of absolute power. You find yourself meticulously planning every interaction, rehearsing your responses, and trying to anticipate every possible scenario. Sleep offers little respite, as your mind continues to churn through the day's events, analyzing perceived missteps and strategizing for tomorrow. Even your dreams are tinged with the anxiety of imperial service. You are a polished surface, reflecting light, but beneath, you feel increasingly hollowed out. The luxury and comfort surrounding you are merely a gilded cage, and the constant expectation to shine within it is slowly, inexorably wearing you down. One crisp autumn afternoon, a rare and unexpected opportunity presents itself. The emperor, in a moment of unusual indulgence, decides to visit a remote imperial hunting lodge, far beyond the familiar walls of the forbidden city. You are among the small retinue chosen to accompany him, a stark contrast to the usual hundreds of attendants. As the palanquin carries you beyond the city's towering walls, a gasp escapes your lips, quickly stifled. The air, unburdened by the palace's heavy perfumes, smells of damp earth and pine needles. The sky, vast and untamed, stretches out above you, a vibrant blue, unmarred by the ornate rooflines you've grown accustomed to. It is a glimpse of the outside, a tantalizing echo of the world you once knew. For a few fleeting moments, the rigid hierarchy seems to loosen its grip. The emperor himself appears slightly more relaxed, a faint smile touching his lips as he breathes in the fresh air. You see trees, not meticulously pruned ornamental ones, but wild, untamed forests stretching to the horizon. You hear the calls of distant birds, not the muted chirps of caged finches. Even the rough feel of the unpaved road beneath the palanquin is a revelation, a sensory experience so different from the polished smoothness of palace corridors. It's a vivid, almost painful reminder of a world that exists beyond your golden prison. It is a well-known historical aspect of imperial life that emperors occasionally sought respite from the rigid protocols of the main palace, venturing to hunting lodges, mountain retreats, or even simply remote pavilions within the palace grounds. These excursions offered a rare, albeit temporary, loosening of courtly strictures, allowing for slightly more informal interactions and a change of scenery for those who accompanied the ruler. For a male concubine, such an opportunity was invaluable. A chance to breathe different air and perhaps even glimpse a sliver of the life that was denied to them. There are scattered historical mentions of favored companions, sometimes being allowed small personal liberties during these imperial excursions, perhaps being permitted to ride a horse alongside the emperor or even join a limited hunting party. Something unheard of within the palace walls. You find yourself gazing out, absorbing every detail: a farmer tilling his field, a child chasing a kite, the simple, unburdened rhythm of ordinary life. What impact these brief moments of perceived freedom had on the psyche of those perpetually confined to the court is a question that continues to intrigue scholars. Did it offer solace, or merely intensify the pain of their captivity upon return? As the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the wild landscape, a pang of longing, sharp and undeniable, pierces through your carefully constructed composure. You realize, with a crushing certainty, that this fleeting moment of connection with the outside world is exactly that, fleeting. Soon, you will return to the palace, to the silence, the silk, and the suffocating weight of imperial expectation. The beauty of the untamed world makes the confines of your golden cage feel even more restrictive, the luxury even more hollow. You savor the scent of the pine, the cool touch of the evening breeze, knowing that these sensations will soon be replaced by the familiar, isolating embrace of the palace. The subtle shift back begins almost imperceptibly, like the slow dimming of a lamp. The invitations to the emperor's private chambers grow less frequent, the periods between summons stretching into days, then weeks. The eunuchs, ever attuned to the imperial pulse, seem to notice first. Their deferential bows remain, but a certain warmth, a hint of genuine regard, drains from their eyes, replaced by a cool, professional distance. You are still treated with respect, but it is the respect afforded to a valuable, yet no longer actively desired, artifact. The air around you, once charged with possibility, now feels strangely inert. The emperor's attention, you realize, is a fleeting, ephemeral thing, akin to a butterfly flitting from bloom to bloom. He is now engrossed in other diversions, perhaps new intellectual pursuits, a fresh campaign of conquest, or, more likely, a new face. You hear whispers of a young scholar recently brought into the palace, whose quick wit and poetic sensibility have captivated the imperial mind. Or perhaps it's a new batch of exquisite porcelain or a newly commissioned painting. Whatever it is not you. This realization, cold and hard, settles in your gut. Your moment in the sun, however brief, is drawing to a close. It's a consistent, historical pattern across many imperial courts that royal favor, particularly for companions not bound by official roles or powerful lineage, was notoriously transient. Emperors and empresses often moved from one favorite to another, driven by novelty, political expediency, or simply a change in personal taste. This inherent instability was a constant threat to those whose power and comfort depended solely on the ruler's personal affection. You understand, intellectually, that this was always a possibility, but the sting of its reality is nonetheless sharp. There are scattered records that detail how some emperors, when their interest waned, would sometimes subtly discourage their former favorites, perhaps by assigning them to tedious tasks or simply ceasing all personal communication, effectively isolating them without overt punishment. You notice little things. Your preferred tea no longer appears. A new, less comfortable cushion replaces your usual one. These minor indignities, seemingly insignificant, are potent symbols of your diminishing standing. The question of whether these shifts in Imperial favor were purely personal or often influenced by the subtle machinations of other powerful court factions trying to remove a rival is a frequent point of discussion among those studying imperial history. It's a complex dance of power and personality. The once vibrant colors of your robes seem duller, the taste of the rich food less appealing. You find yourself spending more time alone in your quarters, gazing out at the meticulously manicured gardens, which now seem to mock you with their unchanging perfection. The sense of purpose that had buoyed you, the drive to please and remain favored, begins to dissipate, replaced by a growing emptiness. The golden cage, once merely confining, now feels like a tomb slowly sealing itself shut around you. You are still within its luxurious walls, but the warmth of imperial favor, that precious, life-giving light has begun to recede. A cold dread begins to creep into your bones, a chilling realization that your elevated status, once seemingly secure, is now dissolving like mist at dawn. The subtle signs become less subtle. Fewer servants attend to your needs, their responses slower, their eyes less respectful. The finer delicacies dwindle from your meals. Invitations to imperial gatherings cease entirely, and you find yourself left out, an inconvenient presence to be quietly overlooked. The emperor's new favorites now occupy the spaces you once held, their laughter echoing from chambers that were once yours. You are no longer merely fading. You are being actively, if silently, pushed aside. The gnawing desperation begins to take root. You, who once possessed a fragile power through proximity to the emperor, are now adrift. You watch the procession of daily life in the palace continue, vibrant and indifferent, while your own existence feels increasingly stagnant, irrelevant. The luxurious silks feel like shackles, the opulent rooms like confining walls. You are trapped in a situation where your very survival depends on a fickle whim that has clearly turned away from you. This slow, agonizing decline is, in many ways, far more cruel than a swift, decisive blow. It allows you to feel every step of your descent. A consistent theme in historical accounts of imperial courts is the brutal reality for those who lost favor. They often faced not just a loss of privilege, but also a significant threat to their safety. Without the emperor's protection, former favorites became vulnerable to the machinations of rivals. They had perhaps unwittingly offended during their time of prominence. The court was a dangerous place where enemies waited in the shadows, and your former rise now makes you a more obvious target for those seeking to settle old scores or simply assert their own burgeoning power. In various historical records, there are mentions of former imperial companions being relegated to menial tasks or exiled to remote, desolate parts of the palace complex as a form of prolonged punishment. Perhaps you begin to receive small, degrading tasks, like overseeing the cleaning of a forgotten courtyard or cataloguing dusty old scrolls, duties far beneath your former status. The question of whether these subtle degradations were solely punitive, or also served as a warning to other aspiring individuals within the court, is a topic that prompts much scholarly discussion. It's a method of control, demonstrating the emperor's absolute power to elevate and to humble. You spend your days consumed by a sickening cocktail of fear and helplessness. You replay past interactions with the emperor, searching for the moment where his interest might have waned, a word misplaced, a gesture misread. Each memory, once a source of comfort, now feels like a clue to your impending doom. The lavish meals turn to ash in your mouth. The soft bedding offers no solace. You are increasingly a ghost in the grand halls, unseen and unheard, desperately clinging to the fading remnants of a life that was never truly yours to begin with. You observe the desperation in others, a mirror reflecting your own escalating fear. The palace is a stage where fortunes rise and fall, and you're now witnessing the frantic scramble of those whose stars are similarly dimming. You see, once officials, their faces etched with anxiety, attempting to regain the emperor's ear through elaborate gifts or carefully orchestrated chance encounters. Former consorts, whose beauty once held sway, now resort to desperate schemes, attempting to malign rivals or even feign illness to draw imperial sympathy. The air is thick with a desperate energy, a frantic dance of survival. You watch an older eunuch, once a powerful figure, now reduced to quietly sweeping forgotten courtyards. His face, once imperious, is now a mask of quiet resignation. You remember the stories of his former glory, his whispered influence, and the suddenness of his fall. It's a stark, chilling preview of your own likely future. The palace has a way of discarding its unwanted inhabitants, not with a bang, but with a slow, suffocating fade into obscurity. This slow decay is a constant, terrifying reminder of your own vulnerability. It is a pervasive historical reality that imperial courts were notorious for their brutal meritocracy of favor, where individuals were constantly evaluated and discarded. If they failed to maintain their utility or appeal, the struggle for prominence was relentless, and those who lost their position often found themselves vulnerable to poverty, exile, or even execution, depending on the severity of their fall. From grace, your current predicament is a testament to this unforgiving system, ancient palace. Chronicles sometimes recount instances of individuals attempting to use sorcery or dark rituals to regain favor. Desperate measures born from the extreme pressures of court life, while such practices were strictly forbidden. Their mere mention in historical texts underscores the lengths to which some went in their pursuit of imperial attention. The question of how much of this scheming was truly effective versus merely a product of superstition and rumor is a fascinating aspect of historical inquiry. It speaks to the psychological impact of such a high-stakes environment. You find yourself weighing your options, however limited they may be. Do you attempt to subtly remind the emperor of your past service, risking further annoyance? Do you try to forge new alliances, knowing that everyone is equally self-interested? Or do you simply retreat, hoping to become invisible enough to avoid further notice? Each choice feels like a step into a minefield. The world outside the palace, once a distant memory, now seems utterly unattainable. You are trapped within these walls, watching the desperate dance of survival, knowing that your turn to perform a similar, futile jig is rapidly approaching. The whispers solidify into a painful reality. A new face has captured the emperor's eye, eclipsing your fading star completely. He is younger, perhaps more vivacious, or possesses a unique charm that resonates with the emperor's current mood. You see him in the courtyards, accompanied by more attendants, his robes richer, his smile brighter. He moves with the confident swagger of someone newly favored, utterly oblivious to the silent tragedy unfolding in your own existence. To the emperor, he is a fresh canvas, a new distraction, and you are simply yesterday's forgotten painting. Your summons cease entirely. The very air around you seems too thin, as if your presence has become less substantial. When you pass the new favorite in the corridors, he might offer a brief, polite nod, or sometimes no acknowledgement at all. You are a ghost, moving through the vibrant, indifferent tapestry of palace life. The bitter irony is not lost on you. The same system that elevated you now effortlessly replaces you, demonstrating its endless capacity for novelty and its ruthless discarding of the old. Your existence has become a stark illustration of the emperor's transient desires. It is a pervasive historical truth that the fluidity of imperial favor meant that new faces were constantly being introduced into the emperor's personal circle, whether as consorts, concubines, or personal attendants. This constant influx often led to the rapid displacement of previous favorites as the emperor's attention shifted. For those reliant solely on his personal affection, this was an existential threat, as their entire status and security hinged on remaining the object of his desire. The arrival of a new, captivating presence often signaled the end of a former. Favorite's fleeting prominence. Consider the intriguing accounts from some periods that describe how the emperor's new toys were sometimes presented to him in elaborate ceremonies, almost like rare gifts, further emphasizing their novelty and desirability. This theatrical introduction could serve to heighten the new favorite's appeal, while simultaneously diminishing the luster of those who came before. How much of this deliberate presentation was genuinely about the emperor's immediate attraction, versus a calculated move by court factions to introduce their own protégés into favor remains a nuanced point of historical discussion. It's a testament to the layers of manipulation within the imperial system. You spend your days watching from the periphery, a silent observer of your own displacement. The new favorite learns the ropes you once mastered, performs the same services, and receives the same lavish gifts. He laughs at the emperor's jokes, listens to his pronouncements, and occupies the intimate spaces that were once yours. There's a strange, detached sorrow in witnessing someone else live out the life you briefly held. The golden cage, now, feels less like a gilded prison and more like a tomb, its walls closing in, leaving you with only the fading echoes of past glories. The palace, once a vibrant, terrifying place, now feels vast and empty around you. The crowds of attendants and courtiers seem to part, leaving an uncomfortable void wherever you move. No one seeks your advice. No one engages you in polite conversation. No one even meets your eye for more than a fleeting, uncomfortable second. You are no longer part of the inner circle, nor even the outer one. You are simply there. Your isolation deepens, a chilling realization that your presence is now an inconvenience, an awkward reminder of a past favor. You begin to spend more time in your quarters. Though they are still luxurious, they feel increasingly like a prison. Cell, the silence, once a welcome respite from the court's clamor, now presses in on you, thick and oppressive. You walk the same paths through the gardens, but the beauty that once captivated you now seems to mock your loneliness. The vibrant blooms and the meticulously raked gravel offer no solace, only a cold, indifferent perfection. You are present, physically, but entirely unseen. A ghost haunting the halls of your own past. Glory, it is a well-documented aspect of imperial courts, that a fall from favor often meant social ostracism, even without formal punishment. Courtiers, driven by self-preservation and a keen understanding of imperial whims, would quickly abandon those no longer in the emperor's good graces, fearing that association could jeopardize their own standing. This immediate social abandonment was a crucial part of the process of disempowerment, effectively stripping an individual of any informal influence or support network they might have cultivated. There are historical accounts describing how for some who lost favor, even their former servants or personal attendants would become distant or disrespectful, reflecting the diminished status of their master. Perhaps you notice your own attendants performing their duties with a new, perfunctory air, their previous eagerness replaced by a resigned efficiency. The question of whether this immediate social shunning was a purely pragmatic response to changing power dynamics, or also a form of collective judgment against the fallen, is a complex point of analysis for those studying court sociology. It's likely a bit of both, rooted in the harsh realities of survival. You find yourself observing the new favorite from a distance, watching him navigate the same treacherous waters you once sailed. He is surrounded by the very same people who once flattered you, their smiles just as bright, their voices just as sick-purred. A strange, detached empathy stirs within you. You know, with chilling certainty that his fate will likely mirror yours. For the emperor's affections are a perpetually shifting tide. But for now, you remain in the shadows, a forgotten echo, unseen by the very world that once revolved, however briefly, around you. The palace moves on, and you are left behind, a silent testament to the fleeting nature of imperial favor. In the quiet, lonely expanse of your quarters, your mind begins to drift, searching for solace in the only place it can find it, the past. You cling to fading memories of a life that feels impossibly distant now, a life before the palace, before the silk and the whispers. You remember the rough, comforting feel of coarse fabric against your skin, a stark contrast to the oppressive smoothness of silk. You recall the sound of wind rustling through bamboo groves, a simpler music than the intricate, often melancholic melodies played on court instruments. These fragments of memory are like precious, fragile embers, glowing faintly against the growing darkness of your present. You think of faces, the weathered smile of your grandmother, the boisterous laughter of childhood friends, the stern but loving gaze of your father. These are not the carefully composed masks of palace courtiers. They are faces etched with genuine emotion, reflecting lives lived in sunlight and hardship, not shadows in gilded cages. You remember the simple taste of plain rice, perhaps seasoned with a bit of salt, infinitely more satisfying than the elaborate, flavorless feasts now placed before you. The memory of muddy fields under a vast, open sky feels more real, more grounding, than the polished marble and painted ceilings that surround you. It's a common psychological observation that individuals in confined or isolated environments often retreat into their memories as a coping mechanism. For those within imperial palaces, especially those who experienced a dramatic shift in status, the past could become a refuge from a present that offered little comfort or hope. This mental escape offered a crucial, albeit temporary, relief from the overwhelming pressures and emptiness of their current existence, allowing them to reconnect with a sense of self that the palace had systematically tried to erase. Historical accounts, particularly diaries or personal letters that occasionally surfaced from individuals associated with the court, sometimes contain wistful reflections on simpler times or a yearning for the world beyond the palace walls. It's not uncommon to find mentions of longing for mundane freedoms, like walking barefoot on grass or speaking without fear of being overheard. The question of whether these nostalgic reflections were purely sentimental or also represented a subtle form of resistance against the oppressive formality of court life is a fascinating area of scholarly debate. It shows the human spirit's attempt to find solace even in the most restrictive circumstances. These memories are your only true possessions now, untainted by the emperor's whims or the machinations of the court. You hold on to them fiercely, replaying them in your mind, cherishing each detail. They are a silent rebellion, a testament to the person you once were, before you became a piece in the emperor's elaborate game. But even as you cling to them, you feel their edges softening, their vibrancy fading. The palace, with its pervasive silence and constant pressure, is slowly, inevitably, consuming even these last vestiges of your former self, leaving you with little but a hollow echo. One chilling afternoon, a summons arrives, not from the emperor, but from the Grand Eunuch. This is not a request for your presence in the imperial chambers for amusement, but a terse command to present yourself in his own austere office. The Grand Eunuch, a man whose smile never reached his eyes, embodies the cold, calculating power of the palace's hidden machinery. His vast network of informants and his absolute control over the imperial household make him a figure more feared. In some ways, than the emperor himself. You walk to his quarters with a growing sense of dread, knowing this meeting signifies nothing good. His office is stark, devoid of the lavish decorations found elsewhere, filled instead with meticulously organized scrolls and the scent of old paper. He sits behind a large, lacquered desk, his expression unreadable. He speaks in a low, even tone, his words precise and devoid of emotion. He doesn't accuse you, doesn't even raise his voice. Instead, he simply lays out the new reality. Your favor is gone, irrevocably. He explains, with chilling clarity, that without the emperor's direct protection, you are now vulnerable. He recounts, in dispassionate detail, the fate of others who lost imperial favor, their demotions, their exiles, their quiet disappearances. This isn't a threat, it's a statement of fact, a grim prognosis for your future. A well-established historical fact about Imperial Chinese courts is the immense power wielded by the Grand Eunuchs. Often rising from humble beginnings, these figures could amass incredible influence, controlling access to the emperor, managing vast wealth, and overseeing the daily operations of the entire palace. Their warnings were rarely idle threats. They were pronouncements of a destiny that, without imperial intervention, was all but sealed. To receive such a direct message from the Grand Eunuch was a terrifying marker of your irreversible decline. Consider the detailed, almost bureaucratic methods some eunuchs use to manage the vast human resources of the palace, including keeping meticulous records of every concubine and favorite, noting their lineage, their periods of favor, and their eventual fates. These ledgers were not just for administrative purposes, they were instruments of control, allowing for efficient management of imperial desires and disposal of the unwanted. The analytical study of these eunuch-controlled systems sheds light on how the personal whims of the emperor were translated into a highly structured and often brutal system of human management. It emphasizes the cold efficiency with which lives were managed within the palace walls. As he speaks, you feel a cold certainty settle over you. There is no appeal, no recourse. His words strip away any lingering hope, any illusion that your former status might offer residual protection. You are simply another entry in the palace's vast, unwritten ledger of discarded souls. You bow, offering the customary courtesies, but inside, a profound emptiness begins to grow. You are no longer just unseen, you are marked. And the Grand Eunuch, with his quiet words and unblinking gaze, has just sealed your fate. The Grand Eunuch's warning solidifies into a harsh new reality. The few tenuous connections you might have cultivated during your time in favor now snap, one by one. Courtiers who once sought your ear now avoid your gaze, their smiles replaced by tight, polite nods if they acknowledge you at all. Those who once flattered you now whisper behind their hands, their words like tiny, sharp stones thrown at your back. You watch as former associates, people you shared meals and polite conversations with, quickly gravitate towards the new favorite, their loyalty shifting with the prevailing winds of imperial favor. You are suddenly, brutally, alone. But it's not just the loss of allies. New enemies begin to emerge from the shadows. Perhaps you unwittingly slighted a minor official, or a powerful eunuch harbored a grudge from a forgotten incident during your time of prominence. These hidden resentments, once suppressed by your favored status, now surface with chilling clarity. You might find your name linked to minor transgressions, rumors circulated about your character, or subtle obstacles placed in your path, making even the simplest daily tasks difficult. The palace, once merely indifferent, now feels actively hostile, its labyrinthine corridors seeming to conspire against you. It's a consistent historical reality that imperial courts were breeding grounds for political enemies. Those who rose quickly often made powerful adversaries, and when their protective shield of imperial favor was removed, these dormant resentments could erupt with devastating consequences. Without the emperor's direct protection, even minor rivals could inflict significant damage, knowing there would be no repercussions. This made the period immediately following a fall from grace particularly dangerous. A precarious tightrope walk where any misstep could lead to ruin. There are scattered examples in imperial records of former favorites being actively slandered or framed for crimes they didn't commit, simply to ensure their complete and irreversible removal from court. Perhaps you notice small unexplainable things occurring around you, a valuable item going missing from your room, only to be found in someone else's possession, or a seemingly innocent comment you made being twisted into something when reported to a minor official. The question of whether these acts were always orchestrated by powerful figures or sometimes the opportunistic actions of lower-ranking individuals seeking to gain favor by eliminating a perceived rival is a complex one in the study of court dynamics. It reflects the constant paranoia inherent in such a system. You are acutely aware of the shifting currents, the sudden coldness in familiar eyes. The loneliness is profound, but the growing sense of vulnerability is even more terrifying. Every shadow seems to conceal a watchful gaze, every hushed conversation a potential plot. You are no longer just an ornament in the golden cage. You are now prey within its gilded walls, surrounded by an ecosystem of predators honed by years of ruthless competition. The palace, once a place of bewildering luxury, has transformed into a chilling battlefield where your very existence is under siege. Driven by a desperate, fleeting hope, you decide to make a direct appeal to the emperor. It is a risky, almost foolish move, but the alternative, a slow, agonizing fade into obscurity, feels far worse. You meticulously plan your approach, waiting for a moment when the emperor might be alone or in a reflective mood, away from the watchful eyes of his new favorites and the ever-present eunuchs. You prepare your words, rehearsing a humble plea, a subtle reminder of your past loyalty, a soft lament for your current predicament. This is your last, desperate gamble, your final attempt to reclaim even a sliver of the emperor's attention. The opportunity eventually arises, perhaps during an early morning stroll in a secluded garden or a quiet moment in his study. You approach, with the utmost deference, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You speak softly, carefully, your voice imbued with a quiet sorrow, not bitterness. You remind him of shared moments, of your unwavering dedication, of the joy you once brought him. You pour out the carefully crafted plea, laying bare a controlled vulnerability, hoping to stir some dormant spark of affection or pity within him. It's a historically recognized, yet often futile, act for those who lost imperial favor to attempt a direct appeal to the emperor. While there are rare instances where such pleas reportedly succeeded, more often they were met with indifference, irritation, or even further condemnation, as the emperor's attention had truly moved on. Such an appeal, for all its emotional weight, was typically a demonstration of the absolute power dynamic, where the ruler was largely immune to personal sentiment once a decision had been made. Your attempt is a poignant testament to the human desire for recognition even in the face of overwhelming odds. Anecdotal records from imperial periods occasionally describe former favorites attempting to present a unique gift or compose a final, moving poem as a last-ditch effort to recapture the emperor's interest. These gestures, often acts of profound artistry, were desperate attempts to remind the ruler of their former charm or talent. The study of these last appeals helps to illustrate the profound emotional dependency that could develop between emperors and their companions, even in relationships built on such unequal power. It also highlights the tragic disconnect that could occur when imperial interest waned. His response, when it comes, is a cold, indifferent dismissal. He barely looks at you, perhaps offering a curt nod or a vague wave of his hand. There is no anger, no harsh words, simply an utter lack of recognition. His eyes, once seemingly full of a fleeting warmth, now hold only a vacant disinterest, as if looking through you, not at you. The words you so carefully prepared dissolve into the silence. He turns away, his attention already elsewhere, perhaps towards the rustling leaves in the garden, or a passing servant. You are dismissed, not with a decree, but with a profound, soul-crushing indifference. The last ember of hope within you flickers and dies, leaving only cold ash. The indifference of the emperor's dismissal, colder than any harsh rebuke, seals your fate. Soon after, a eunuch arrives with a quiet, polite instruction. Your quarters are to be changed. You are to move from the relatively opulent chambers you once occupied to a smaller, more remote section of the palace, far from the central courtyards and the emperor's immediate gaze. This isn't a direct punishment, not truly, but a slow, calculated demotion, a stripping away of your former privileges. The palace, in its subtle cruelty, is telling you that you are no longer worthy of its prime spaces, its central attention. The new quarters are still within the palace walls, but they are a world away from your previous rooms. The silk is coarser, the furniture simpler, the decorations sparse. The windows, instead of overlooking bustling courtyards or manicured gardens, might face a forgotten alleyway or a crumbling wall. The air feels damp and heavy, carrying the faint scent of dust and disuse. You notice cracked tiles, fading paint, and the quiet hum of neglect. Even the light seems dimmer here, as if the sun itself hesitates to penetrate this forgotten corner. This is where unwanted things are stored, where former glories are left to wither. It is a pervasive historical practice in many imperial courts to relegate disgraced or unwanted individuals to lesser quarters as a form of non-violent, yet deeply humiliating punishment. This physical isolation served to cut them off from sources of information, influence, and daily contact with the court's power centers, effectively rendering them invisible. For someone who had once lived in the heart of imperial favor, such a move was a stark and painful symbol of their complete loss of status. Some historical accounts even mention the specific, often unflattering, names given to these forgotten sections of palaces, like the Cold Palace or the House of Regrets, vividly illustrating their purpose. You might notice that the few servants assigned to this area move with a sluggishness born of apathy, their faces reflecting the quiet despair that permeates these forgotten halls. The academic examination of these spatial power dynamics within imperial residences provides insights into how physical location was used as a tool of social control and punishment, illustrating the systematic degradation of those who fell from grace. It's a literal manifestation of being pushed to the margins. You unpack your few remaining possessions, which now seem ironically grand in these humble surroundings. The once luxurious robes feel out of place, a stark reminder of a life that is no longer yours. You find yourself listening to the muffled sounds of the distant palace, the faint echoes of laughter or music from the vibrant world you've been excised from your new quarters, while offering a semblance of privacy. are a constant, tangible reminder of your fall, a quiet declaration that you are no longer part of the emperor's world, destined instead for a slow, ignominious decay. In your new, diminished quarters, time stretches out, slow and unbroken, an endless expanse of idleness. The meticulous routines that once filled your days, the grooming, the lessons, the carefully choreographed performances for the emperor have vanished. There's no one to please, no one to impress, no one even to fear in the immediate vicinity. You are left with only yourself and the crushing weight of boredom. The silence, once punctuated by the subtle hum of Pallas's life, is now profound, a suffocating blanket that smothers any flicker of thought or purpose. You try to fill the hours. You might attempt to read the few scrolls left behind, but your mind wanders, unable to focus. You might try to practice a musical instrument, but the notes sound hollow and lifeless in the empty room. Even sleep offers little escape. Your days blur into an indistinguishable cycle of waking and dozing, marked only by the arrival of meager meals. The lack of purpose, the utter insignificance of your existence, is a far more insidious torment than any physical hardship. You are a discarded chess piece left on the board after the game has moved on, utterly without function. It's a historical reality that idleness and isolation were common fates for those who fell from favor in imperial courts. Stripped of their duties and social connections, individuals often languished in physical comfort but profound psychological distress. The deliberate removal of purpose was a subtle, yet effective, form of control and punishment, ensuring that the disgraced individual remained powerless and forgotten. Your current circumstances are a stark illustration of this brutal aspect of palace life. Some historical records from other imperial cultures, like the Ottoman Empire, describe similar fates for deposed figures who, though not always executed, were often confined to luxurious but utterly isolated apartments, sometimes for decades, slowly losing their sanity. Perhaps you begin to count the cracks in the ceiling, or observe the patterns of dust motes dancing in the limited sunlight, desperate for any distraction. The academic discourse on the psychological impact of sensory deprivation and social isolation within historical contexts often highlights the profound mental and emotional decay that could result from such conditions. Turning opulence into a form of slow torture, the days blend into weeks, then months, marked only by the changing light. Outside your window, the vibrancy that once defined you, however fleetingly, drains away, leaving behind a dull, listless shell. You gaze at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror, and you barely recognize the eyes staring back. They are hollow, vacant, stripped of all ambition and hope. You are living, breathing proof that without purpose, even in the lap of luxury, the spirit can slowly, irrevocably die. This existence is not just confinement. It is a slow, living death. One suffocating evening, as you languish in your desolate quarters, a faint sound breaks the oppressive silence. Whispers. They are hushed, urgent, drifting from a poorly sealed vent or a thin wall connecting your room to an adjacent, equally forgotten chamber. You strain to listen, your blood quickening for the first time in weeks. The voices are low, indistinct at first, but then a word, sharp and clear, pierces the air. Succession. Your heart leaps. This is not idle gossip. This is something vital, something dangerous. You press your ear against the cool stone, your breath held. The whispers grow clearer, painting a fragmented but terrifying picture. It's a plot, a dangerous scheme involving powerful court factions, perhaps even a disgruntled prince or an ambitious general. They speak of manipulating imperial edicts, forging documents, perhaps even eliminating rivals. The sheer audacity of it sends a shiver down your spine. This is a game far beyond your understanding, a treacherous current that could drown everyone in its path. You are not a player, but an unwitting eavesdropper, privy to a secret that could easily cost you your life. It's a foundational aspect of imperial history, that plots and conspiracies were a constant undercurrent in court life, especially during periods of imperial weakness or uncertain succession. The stakes were incredibly high, with entire dynasties able to rise or fall based on the success or failure of such schemes. For someone like you, marginalized and vulnerable, stumbling upon such information was not a path to power, but an immediate and grave danger. As witnesses to treason were rarely spared. There are detailed imperial records of various clandestine communication methods used in the palace, from coded messages exchanged in flower arrangements to specific types of incense that signaled meetings. Perhaps the whispered names you hear belong to figures whose faces you've seen only from a distance. Figures of immense power who now sound desperate and ruthless. The scholarly analysis of these palace conspiracies often focuses on the complex web of loyalties, betrayals, and sheer paranoia that defined life at the very pinnacle of power, highlighting how precarious even the most secure positions could be. It shows that even in the ultimate golden cage, the bars were rarely truly stable. You pull back from the wall, your mind reeling. This secret is a burning coal in your hands, too hot to hold, too dangerous to discard. You are caught in a terrible bind. To reveal what you've heard means exposing yourself and potentially facing the wrath of powerful, ruthless individuals. To keep silent means carrying a burden that could erupt at any moment, consuming you in its fiery fallout. The boredom that had suffocated you now seems a welcome reprieve compared to this terrifying new reality. You are no longer merely waiting to be discarded. You are a ticking time bomb, filled with forbidden knowledge. The very next day, a chilling edict ripples through the palace, a testament to the emperor's casual, yet absolute, cruelty. It's not aimed at you directly, but at someone tangentially connected to the whispers you overheard, a minor official, perhaps, or a distant relative of one of the conspirators. The decree is swift and brutal, exile to a desolate frontier, or perhaps the confiscation of their family's assets, plunging them into destitution. The reason given is vague, a minor infraction or a perceived disloyalty, but you know, with a sickening certainty, that it is connected to the secret you now carry. This ruthless decree serves as a stark, terrifying demonstration of the emperor's power. He doesn't need proof or even a compelling reason. His word is law. His suspicions are enough. The ease with which he can dismantle a life, shatter a family, sends a cold wave of fear through you. If he can do this to someone with tangential involvement, what fate awaits you, who heard the very heart of the plot? The palace seems to shrink around you, its grandeur replaced by an overwhelming sense of suffocation. Every step you take, every breath you draw, feels precarious. It's a grim historical reality that imperial power in ancient China often operated with such arbitrary and absolute authority. The emperor's will was paramount, and punishments, even for minor perceived offenses or based on mere suspicion, could be incredibly severe. This created an atmosphere of pervasive fear and uncertainty where no one, regardless of their status, was truly safe from the emperor's unpredictable wrath. For individuals caught in the cross currents of court politics, such decrees were constant, terrifying reminders of their vulnerability. There are numerous imperial records that show how quickly the emperor's displeasure could translate into devastating consequences, sometimes for entire families or clans. The ripple effect of one imperial decision could destroy countless lives, reinforcing the notion that the emperor's power reached far beyond the palace walls. The analysis of these swift and often unexplained imperial actions frequently considers the underlying political motivations. Were they truly about justice, or about sending a message to other potential dissenters and maintaining absolute control through fear? It reveals the ruthless logic of ultimate power. You begin to imagine your own name on such a decree, your own fate sealed by a passing thought of the emperor. The secret you carry burns hotter now, a dangerous, volatile entity. You realize that simply knowing this information makes you a liability, a loose thread in the imperial tapestry that must be neatly tied off or cut. The walls of your neglected quarters, once merely symbols of your demotion, now feel like the confines of a tomb, slowly closing in. The emperor's casual cruelty, witnessed from afar, has ignited a desperate primal fear within you. The raw visceral fear ignited by the emperor's ruthless decree begins to morph into a desperate, almost manic desire for escape. Your mind, once resigned to its slow decay, now races with increasingly unrealistic fantasies of freedom. You picture yourself slipping past the guards, scaling the palace walls in the dead of night, blending into the bustling anonymity of the capital city. You imagine trading your silken robes for simple peasant clothes, working the land, or finding solace in a forgotten temple. The practicalities are a distant blur. The sheer idea of escape, the possibility of a life unburdened by imperial whim, becomes an obsession. You scrutinize the palace layout from your neglected window, looking for blind spots, unguarded gates, any weakness in the fortress that has become your prison. You recall stories of cunning commoners outwitting powerful officials, of daring escapes from impregnable prisons. These tales, once mere diversions, now become blueprints for your feverish imagination. You map out routes in your mind, calculate distances, even conjure up imaginary disguises. It's a futile exercise, you know, a desperate flight of fancy, but it offers a fleeting comfort, a temporary reprieve from the suffocating reality of your confinement. It's a historical truth that within the highly guarded and regulated environment of imperial palaces, successful escapes were incredibly rare, bordering on impossible for anyone of your status. The network of guards, eunuchs, and spies was too pervasive, the walls too high, and the world outside often too dangerous for someone unaccustomed to fending for themselves. This overwhelming difficulty underscores the sheer desperation that would drive an individual to even conceive of such a plan. Your longing for freedom is a poignant reflection of this desperate longing. Accounts from some periods, albeit often legendary, tell of individuals attempting to bribe guards with hidden jewels or feigning madness to be dismissed from court, hoping to find freedom, however precarious, outside the palace. You might even find yourself contemplating such drastic, improbable measures, so desperate are you for an exit. The historical scholarship on escape attempts from highly secure institutions often examines the psychological state of extreme duress that leads individuals to take such immense risks, even when the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against them. It highlights the power of hope, however faint, in the face of absolute control. Each fleeting fantasy, each meticulously crafted escape plan in your mind, offers a momentary surge of adrenaline, a brief illusion of control. But then, the cold reality crashes back in. The impenetrable walls, the omnipresent guards, the sheer lack of resources or allies on the outside, they all conspire to extinguish the flickering flame of hope. You are trapped more securely than ever before by your circumstances and by the knowledge that your perceived freedom is nothing but a cruel mirage. The dreams of escape become just another form of torture, a constant reminder of what you cannot have. The mental strain of confinement, the gnawing anxiety of your uncertain fate, and the pervasive despair of being utterly insignificant begin to take a physical toll. Your appetite wanes, and the luxurious, yet often bland, palace food loses all. Appeal, sleep, once a refuge, becomes fitful, haunted by restless dreams and waking moments of stark terror. Your body, once vibrant and carefully tended, starts to betray you. A persistent cough might settle in your chest, or a dull ache might take root in your joints. You feel a profound weariness, a deep-seated fatigue that no amount of rest seems to alleviate. The once smooth skin now feels papery, your eyes shadowed and sunken. You catch glimpses of yourself in polished surfaces, seeing a gaunt, ghostly figure that barely resembles the person you once were. Your movements, once graceful and practiced, become slow and heavy, burdened by an unseen weight. The chill of your neglected quarters seems to seep into your very bones, and a perpetual shiver runs through you, even on warmer days. You are wasting away, not from lack of food, but from a deeper, more profound starvation of hope and purpose. It is a well-documented aspect of historical imprisonment and confinement that prolonged psychological stress and social isolation can severely impact physical health. Without proper mental stimulation, emotional support, and a sense of agency, the body's natural defenses weaken, making individuals more susceptible to illness and general decline. For those in luxurious but psychologically oppressive environments, like the palace, the absence of overt physical hardship did not prevent a deterioration of well-being. Records from various periods sometimes mention the prevalence of what were often termed melancholy illnesses, or consumption of the spirit among confined individuals, which manifested as physical ailments but had their roots in profound despair. Perhaps you notice that even minor cuts take longer to heal, or a persistent cold refuses to leave. The scholarly exploration of psychosomatic illnesses in historical contexts illuminates how the mind's suffering could directly translate into physical symptoms, particularly in environments where outward expression of distress was forbidden or dangerous. It highlights the intricate connection between mental state and bodily health. The few attendants who still visit your quarters seem to notice your decline. Their glances, brief and filled with a quiet pity or a morbid curiosity, they bring you tonics and herbal teas, remedies for a body that is failing, but none for the spirit that is dying. You sip the bitter concoctions, knowing they are futile. The illness that grips you is not of the flesh alone. It is a profound sickness of the soul, brought on by the slow, agonizing process of being forgotten and discarded. Each breath feels like an effort, each day a struggle, as your body mirrors the decay of your life within the golden cage. The court physician, a man whose face is as inscrutable as the emperor's, eventually pays you a visit. This isn't a gesture of compassion, but a routine assessment, a confirmation of your inevitable decline. He examines you with detached professionalism, his fingers cold against your wrist as he checks your pulse, his gaze clinical as he notes your pale complexion and sunken eyes. He asks a few perfunctory questions, his voice flat, clearly expecting no answers of substance. To him, you are merely a collection of symptoms, a body nearing its expiration, not a person with a story or a soul. He prescribes more tonics, more herbal concoctions, but his demeanor conveys a clear message. These are mere formalities. There is no genuine hope in his eyes, no flicker of concern. You are a lost cause, and he is simply going through the motions. His medical knowledge, vast as it may be, is powerless against the true ailment that consumes you, the poison of neglect, the slow death of purpose, the crushing weight of insignificance. You are an inconvenience to be managed, your demise an administrative detail to be awaited. It is a historical observation that in imperial courts, the health and well-being of a favored individual were meticulously monitored. But once that favor waned, the level of medical attention often diminished proportionally. Physicians, keen to align themselves with power, might dedicate less effort to those who no longer held influence, viewing them as a drain on resources rather than a patient to be genuinely cured. This pragmatic shift in care was a subtle but profound indicator of a person's declining status. Ancient medical texts from various Chinese dynasties sometimes include detailed descriptions of illnesses of sorrow or heart fire syndromes, conditions that seem to align with prolonged psychological distress and emotional imbalance rather than purely physical pathogens. The physician might mumble something about imbalanced humors or a stagnant spirit, cloaking your despair in medical jargon. The scholarly analysis of historical medical diagnoses often delves into how much these diagnoses were genuinely based on empirical observation versus how much they reflected prevailing philosophical beliefs or even served as convenient explanations. For politically inconvenient ailments, it highlights the blend of science and superstition in ancient healing. As the physician gathers his instruments, his gaze briefly meets yours. There is no pity, no recognition of your shared humanity, only a cold, professional assessment. He nods curtly, issues a few final, meaningless instructions to your dwindling attendants, and then departs, his footsteps fading quickly down the corridor. His visit leaves you with a profound sense of finality. Even the healers, those who dedicate their lives to preserving life, have abandoned you. You are on your own, adrift in a sea of indifference, waiting for the inevitable. The quiet hum of the palace carries new whispers now, hushed and morbid. They are not about the emperor's new favorite, nor about court intrigues, but about you. You hear snippets from passing servants, a sudden silence as someone notices you, followed by furtive glances. The rumors circulate like a slow poison. Your health is failing, your spirit is broken, your end is near. You are becoming a morbid curiosity, a tragic anecdote even before your story concludes. The palace, ever the gossip mill, is already writing the final chapter of your existence. Completely oblivious to your silent suffering, this omnipresent hum of gossip is a cruel reminder of how little privacy or dignity you have left. Your decline, once a private agony, is now public spectacle. The once feared whispers of intrigue have been replaced by the soft murmurs of morbid fascination. Each averted gaze, each hushed conversation reinforces the chilling truth. You are already being mourned, not with sadness, but with the detached interest reserved for a spectacle. The living world of the palace is already receding, leaving you behind in a liminal space between life and oblivion. It's a consistent, historical characteristic of imperial courts that rumors and gossip played a significant role in shaping perceptions, and often precipitating downfalls. The lack of direct communication and the intense competition meant that information, true or false, spread rapidly, influencing the opinions of those in power and those around them. For someone in your vulnerable position, becoming the subject of such rumors was an almost irreversible sign of your impending end. Ancient court records occasionally allude to instances where individuals who had lost favor were said to suffer from ghostly afflictions or curses of the Jade Chamber, attributing their decline to supernatural forces rather than the more mundane realities of neglect and despair. Perhaps the whispers you hear suggest such mystical reasons for your failing health, adding a layer of tragic superstition to your quiet demise. The scholarly examination of these superstitious beliefs within historical narratives reveals how fear and a lack of understanding of psychological and physical decline were often explained through folklore and a fatalistic view of imperial will. It highlights the cultural lens through which such personal tragedies were viewed. You feel a strange detachment as you listen to the morbid whispers, as if they are discussing someone else entirely. Your spirit, already battered and bruised, has little left to give. The dreams of escape, the hope of redemption, have long since faded. Now there is only a quiet resignation, a strange acceptance of the inevitable. The palace, which once felt like a terrifying, beautiful monster, has revealed itself to be something far more mundane and far more terrifying, a machine that consumes, lives, and then moves on, indifferent to the broken pieces it leaves behind. You are merely one such piece, slowly becoming a statistic, a footnote in the grand, indifferent history of the imperial court. As the whispers of your impending end grow louder, your mind, almost instinctively, reaches for one last, fading memory, a moment of unadulterated joy from a life that seems ages ago. Perhaps it's the warmth of sunlight on your face in a field, of golden rice, the feeling of rich earth between your bare toes. Or perhaps it's the sharp, sweet taste of a wild berry, plucked directly from the bush, its juice staining your lips. It could be the sound of a distant flute, played by a wandering musician in your village, a melody simpler, yet more resonant than any courtly composition. This memory, raw and unpolished, becomes a final, precious anchor in the swirling chaos of your demise. You cling to this image, this sensation, this sound, replaying it in the quiet solitude of your neglected room. It's a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the palace, a testament to a world where beauty was found not in gold and jade, but in the simple, transient moments of everyday life. The memory is bittersweet, a poignant reminder of what you had and what you lost, but also a final, defiant assertion of the person you were before the palace began its slow, systematic erasure. It is your final, internal rebellion against the overwhelming indifference that surrounds you. It's a common psychological phenomenon that in moments of extreme duress or nearing the end of life, individuals often experience a heightened recall of significant past memories, particularly those associated with comfort, happiness, or a sense of self. For those trapped in the oppressive environment of an imperial palace, these personal memories served as a vital link to their identity beyond their courtly role. This internal landscape became their last bastion of autonomy, untouchable by external forces. Historical accounts of individuals facing dire circumstances sometimes recount them drawing strength from personal talismans or deeply held private recollections. Things utterly insignificant to the outside world, but profoundly meaningful to them. Perhaps your memory involves a small, treasured object you once owned, now long gone, but its image remains vividly etched in your mind. The academic exploration of memory as a coping mechanism in contexts of extreme power imbalance highlights its crucial role in maintaining a sense of self and dignity when all external markers of identity are stripped away. It shows the resilience of the human spirit even in its final moments. This one memory, vibrant and pure, becomes your last comfort. It's a silent defiance, a small act of reclamation in a world that has taken everything else. You close your eyes, letting the image wash over you, feeling the warmth, hearing the sounds, tasting the sweetness. It is a moment of peace, however fleeting, before the final descent. The palace can control your body, confine your days, and steal your future. But it cannot, ultimately, steal this last, precious fragment of who you truly are. The palace, oblivious to your fading pulse, continues its grand, indifferent dance. The emperor's new favorite laughs in the main halls, the eunuchs whisper their latest intrigues, and the imperial machinery grinds on, unceasing. Outside your window, the seasons change, the sun rises and sets, painting the forgotten walls of your quarters with fleeting light. But within, your own light dims, unnoticed by the bustling world just beyond your door. The palace cares nothing for individual sorrows. It is a monument to power, a stage for endless ambition, and it simply moves on, leaving discarded lives in its wake. The sounds of distant music, the faint scent of exotic perfumes from the grand feasts, the muffled clamor of daily court life, they all reach you, distorted and detached like echoes from another dimension. You are no longer part of that vibrant tableau, merely a silent observer, a shadow clinging to the edges of existence. The world outside your room, the world that once revolved, however briefly, around your presence, is now utterly unconcerned with your slow, inevitable departure. It is a profound, chilling indifference that transcends all other pains. It's a chilling historical reality that for many individuals within imperial systems, particularly those who lacked official status or powerful family backing, their personal suffering and eventual demise often went largely unrecorded and unmourned by the grand narrative of court history. Their lives were simply footnotes, their ends absorbed into the seamless continuity of imperial power. This institutional indifference was a hallmark of systems, where individuals were merely tools or ornaments for the state. Accounts from some periods of imperial history sometimes mention the stoicism or even coldness with which deaths, particularly those of less significant figures, were treated within the palace. There were no public displays of grief, no official mourning periods for someone like you. The efficient machinery of the court simply registered a vacancy and then moved on. The scholarly inquiry into the concept of imperial disposability highlights how easily and quickly lives could be erased from the collective consciousness of the court once they ceased to serve a purpose, illustrating the dehumanizing aspect of absolute power. It reveals how profoundly insignificant individual lives could become within such a vast impersonal system. You lie there, a quiet testament to the fleeting nature of all things, watching the last vestiges of your strength ebb away. The grand architecture, the intricate carvings, the luxurious silks, they all feel like a cruel joke now. Symbols of a life that offered much but ultimately delivered nothing but isolation and sorrow. The indifference of the palace is not malicious. It is far worse. It is the indifference of a machine, cold and efficient, processing lives without a hint of emotion. And as your breath grows shallower, you realize this is the final, most profound lesson the golden cage has to teach. You are ultimately, utterly alone. The final moments arrive not with a dramatic flourish, but with a quiet exhale. There is no audience, no mourning procession, no imperial decree marking your passage. Your breath grows shallow, ragged, then simply ceases. The palace, with its hundreds of inhabitants and its endless rituals, remains entirely unperturbed. Perhaps a junior eunuch discovers your stillness during a routine check, or a servant finds your untouched meal. The discovery is met with a quiet efficiency, a practiced detachment. You are no longer a person. You are a task, a body to be discreetly removed. Your removal from the palace is as unceremonious as your last breath. There are no grand rites, no elaborate preparations. Your body, once adorned in fine silks and pampered with fragrant oils, is wrapped in simple cloth, perhaps even a discarded shroud. You are carried out, not through the grand, gilded gates, but through a lesser entrance, a servant's passage under the cloak of night. There is no procession, no mourners. The only sounds are the soft scuff of feet on stone and the rustle of the fabric against the cool night air. You are taken to a common burial ground, or perhaps a neglected corner of the imperial cemetery reserved for the forgotten. Your end is as humble as your beginning was before the palace snatched you away. It is a stark historical reality that many who lived and died within the vast machinery of imperial courts, particularly those of lower status, or who had fallen from favor, received no significant burial or commemoration. Their lives, having served their purpose for the emperor or the court, were simply extinguished and quickly forgotten, underscoring the ephemeral nature of individual existence within such a system. Your unceremonious departure is a testament to this chilling reality, a quiet, unremarkable end to a tumultuous life. Court documents sometimes include brief, administrative notations of deaths, often devoid of personal detail, simply marking an individual's removal from the rolls. Perhaps a small, almost illegible entry will note your passing, a mere tally in a vast ledger. The study of these sparse records helps to illustrate the impersonal and bureaucratic nature of death within the imperial complex, where even those who once held the emperor's personal attention could vanish without a trace. It demonstrates how life, once used, was merely discarded. The vastness of the palace looms behind you as you are carried away, its lighted windows gleaming like cold, indifferent eyes. You leave no legacy, no grand monuments, no lasting impact on the imperial narrative. Your brief flicker in the emperor's favor, your subsequent decline, and your quiet death are all but invisible to the sweeping tide of history you entered. The golden cage as a boy full of unknown potential, and you leave it as a forgotten whisper, absorbed back into the silent anonymity from which you came. The gilded walls stand tall, uncaring, ready to welcome the next new face destined for a similar, tragic fate. Your story, my friend, is not etched in imperial annals or sung by bards. It is not celebrated, nor is it overtly mourned. Instead, it is a tiny ripple on the vast ocean of time, a brief, poignant flash that quickly fades into the grand, indifferent sweep of history. The palace continues, year after year, century after century, welcoming new faces, consuming them, and then discarding them with the same serene detachment. Empires rise and fall, dynasties succeed one another, and the gilded walls stand, silent witnesses to countless such forgotten lives. You are merely one among them, a testament to the brutal, dehumanizing efficiency of absolute power. Your journey through that golden cage was not about glory or lasting impact. It was a brief, intense encounter with a system that prized utility and beauty above all else, a system that saw individuals not as complex beings, but as temporary adornments or tools. Your tragic fate is a quiet reminder that even in the lap of luxury, freedom and dignity can be utterly absent. Your life was a poignant echo, a whisper in the vast echoing halls of a palace that heard only its own relentless rhythm. It is a profound historical truth that for every celebrated emperor or powerful minister, countless lives were consumed and discarded by the imperial system. These were the hidden costs of power, the untold stories of those whose existence was entirely dependent on the whims of a ruler and the treacherous currents of court politics. Your personal tragedy, though forgotten by official records, resonates as a powerful reminder of the human cost behind the glittering facade of empire. The very concept of individual significance, as we understand it today, was often secondary to the collective glory of the imperial house. Lives like yours were considered expendable, existing purely to serve the larger state apparatus or the personal desires of the emperor. How frequently these personal stories of heartbreak and oblivion truly permeated the consciousness of the broader populace. Beyond palace walls remains a subject of historical speculation. It's likely they did not, further cementing the isolation of individuals like you. And so, as the final shadows stretch and the last whispers fade, your personal history settles into the vast, silent archives of the forgotten. No grand tomb marks your resting place, no memorial stone bears your name. You are absorbed back into the earth, just as your memory is absorbed back into the anonymity from which you briefly emerged. The palace, enduring and remorseless, stands as a monument to its own power, a silent testament to the countless lives, like yours, that passed through its beautiful, yet ultimately unforgiving embrace. Word count 1040 now. As the long journey through the ancient palace concludes, allow your mind to gently detach from the shimmering silks and the echoing corridors. Feel the weight of the story lift, slowly, softly, like a departing mist. You've walked through shadows, witnessed a fragile existence, and seen the quiet sorrow of a life consumed by grandeur. But those echoes belong to the past, to a time and a place far removed from the comfort of your own world. Let the images fade, the whispers cease, and the anxieties of a bygone era dissolve into the peaceful stillness of your room. Breathe deeply, feel the softness of your blankets, and remember that safety and peace are here, now. Drift into quiet slumber, knowing that the curtains have closed on tonight's tale, leaving only the calm embrace of the night. Sweet dreams.